you're a first-time landlord, then this video will walk you through the essential steps that you need to know in order to prepare for your journey as a landlord, to make it as smooth and stress-free as possible. Hello, my name is Wendyojiro. I'm a realtor. And today I'd like to share with you my top tips for first-time landlords. So please get your pen and paper and let's get into it. Being a landlord is a responsibility, it's a business, and it's best if you adequately prepare for it. I'll take you through the three main stages of what you would expect through the life cycle of your property. So first and foremost is the pre-tenancy stage. Before you go out looking for a tenant, the first thing that you have to make sure is that your property is safe and habitable. This is usually the case for new properties, but if it's an older property, then you'll have to check. Go and do an inspection, preferably with a professional. Check that there's clean water, electricity, there are no leakages, there are no structural defects. Thoroughly inspect the property and only proceed to renting out once you have ticked this box. After you've done that, then now you're ready to look for a tenant. Take your time looking for a tenant. Don't be in a rush, especially new landlords can get very anxious when things are not happening fast, but do not be in a rush. Make sure you get the right person. It's better you take some time, but get the right tenant. And according to me, a good tenant is somebody with a reliable and consistent income, who pays their rent on time, who is adhering to the laws of the lease, and takes good care of your property. So take your time to get the right person. So as you're looking for tenants, try and talk to 1, 2, 3 people. Don't go only for the first person that you talk to. Talk to at least 3 people to have a good feel of that you're getting the best tenant possible. And when you have landed on the right tenant, then the next step is tenant screening. Do a thorough background check on your tenant. Find out who they are, who they will be living with in the property, where do they work, why are they moving from the place that they have moving. Have a feel of their rental history. Most importantly, make sure that you can gauge how much their income is so that you know whether they can afford your property or not. And you also have to make sure you ask for a security deposit in this area. Typically, you ask for 2 months deposit and 1 month rent to secure you. As you get all these details, make sure that it is well documented and have a colored passport photo together with some form of identification. That could be an ID or passport. Once you are done with this stage, then you're ready for handover. When we come to the handover stage, then you do inspection again. You will walk through with your tenant through the whole house, go room by room, item by item, and take an inventory of everything. So what I usually do is I will record everything in the inspection form and take pictures as well. So this will be uploaded to a Google Drive, and then both the landlord and the tenant have access to it. This is a great reference, especially when the tenant is moving out. Then you can see where there are damages, then it's easy to go back to that report and then deduct whatever expenses you need to cover that damage from the deposit. Once you have done that, then the next step is signing a lease agreement. Make sure that any tenant you engage does not enter your property before you sign a lease agreement. This is what will protect both you and the tenant. And it will set clear expectations of what both of you are responsible for and what the consequences are if they don't do that. Make sure your lease agreement is well drafted, comprehensive and clear. How much is the rent? Where will it be paid? What are the rules of your property? Do you allow pets, sublease, and all of that? Make sure it's very clear. And then once both parties have signed, then the tenant can get into the house. I always advise, don't let the tenant go in before you have a signed agreement, by both parties. That is the only way to clarify that you're both on the same page. Before the tenant moves in, I would also advise you take a record of water meters and electricity meters. I take photos of that as well, so both the number and the photo, so that you know as of the time the tenant is coming in, one, there are zero bills, and two, it's easy to track, because sometimes these utility providers, they come from nowhere and give you a big bill. So if you've been keeping records, then it's easy to refer, and then they can correct that issue. So once your tenant is in the house, then your job is ongoing. Being a landlord is a continuous job. You need to do maintenance. So I would advise you inspect your property at least once a year. This will help you to know if the property is in good condition, if the tenant is taking good care of the property, and if anything comes up, you're able to correct it in good time. During the duration of the lease, you will also need to pay rental income tax, which is 7.5% of your rental income. That is the total income that you get before expenses, and you'll remit it monthly. Remember to also pay your service charge on time. That is very crucial. That is one of your responsibilities as a landlord, and it will make sure that your property is running smoothly, because the management needs money to pay security, to pay lifts, to pay common areas. So it is an obligation to pay your service charge on time. I see many landlords do it yearly so that it just gets out of the way. And service charge is due whether you have a tenant or not. So please plan for this adequately so that it doesn't interfere with your finances. As a landlord, make sure that you also record all your expenses. Open an Excel sheet, a simple Excel sheet, record your income, record your expenses, and keep track of all of them, because this is a business after all. And when it comes to taxes, you'll have to make sure that any expense that you take, whether for material or labor, you have to get an e-Teams invoice for it. As of from this year, KRA requires you to have an e-Teams invoice. Otherwise, they will not recognize that expense. So as you go through your repairs or any other services that you get, make sure that your service providers give you an e-Teams receipt. Otherwise, it will not be recognized. All your communication with your tenant should also be professional and recorded. Like WhatsApp these days is kind of formal, but preferably email. As a landlord, make sure you have good record of all your communication, of all your expenses, and everything you do should be well documented. So that is during the lease period. So we've started with what you do before the tenant comes, during the tenancy. Now the last stage is tenancy termination. Every tenancy comes to an end at some point. It could be that the lease agreement the period has elapsed. In Kenya, most leases are 1 year renewable, or it could be one of the parties has decided to terminate the lease. If it is you who has terminated the lease, make sure you give your tenant adequate notice and that you treat them with decorum during this time. If it is an eviction, maybe due to lack of paying rent or not adhering to the lease, you have to make sure first you follow the due process, warnings, and everything that you need to do. Follow the correct legal procedure before terminating the lease. Then once the lease has been terminated and now it's time for the tenant to move out, then you come, you do an inspection again. Go around with the tenant once again, room by room, and check the inventory. Refer to the inventory form and photos that you took at the beginning of the tenancy. And then give the tenant a full list of all the deductions that you will make from their deposit. Deposit should never act as rent, and this should be very clear to your tenant when they're moving in, and should be adequately covered in the tenancy agreement, because there could be pending bills. Make sure you check the utility bills as well, water and electricity, so that you make sure nothing is pending. Make sure that you track this on a regular basis, and then when it comes to the end of the tenancy, then you'll have a very smooth transition. So these are the main things that every first-time landlord should keep in mind to make sure that you have a smooth transition. And when that is complete, then you start the cycle again. And as a landlord, you'll go through this cycle many times during your time as a landlord. So once your old tenant moves out, then you start afresh. You do an inspection to make sure the property is in good order. Then you screen the new tenant. Then you do a lease agreement and start again and again. It is a continuous process. If you don't have the time or expertise to do this, I would advise you to get a property manager who can take care of this on your behalf full time. So that is it for today. If you know a new landlord who would benefit from this information, please share this video with them. And if you have any questions regarding being a new landlord, then share it with me in the comments below, and we will engage further.